Yo! Video games.
And let's talk about our revised forecast. But anyways, this was my 22. And kind of more to reiterate, I guess, a little bit, was that Nintendo kind of has to feel a little bit harder on the Switch, because they don't have a Pro model. This is nice music. Alright, this music's too nice. I can't handle it. We gotta go back to the bush or no bush. Sorry. Music's too nice. I am literally being distracted by it. So back to this bullshit we go. So anyways, yeah. They don't have a Pro model of Switch. They don't really have a hardware to sell you. What they have is pretty much 5-year-old hardware at this point. They have a 5-fucking-year-old system that's been very successful. So they've got to... I feel they've got to do a little more kind of like convincing you, because like the reality is that 5 years into a console's life, most people have bought the system and have bought the game they're gonna buy. But let me kind of show you. Let me show you something. Let me show you all something here. What I want to point out here is that attach rates for consoles. Now, this is only as of September 30th, 2021. Okay, so this isn't the revised forecast, which will come, I think, at the end of this month. But anyways, the point here is that this was at 93 million at the end of September, well, October. It's probably crossed 100. The attach rate for the Switch is almost 7 to 9, right? Like almost 7 to 10. So basically what this implies is that on average a Nintendo Switch owner will buy 6 to 7 games for the system. Now then that's actually pretty good in comparison to the 3DS, which was, you know, as you can see here, 7.5 to like 4 if we're being generous. Like, the Wii U actually had an incredible attach rate. Like that, it was, you know, 10 to 1, which is actually very, very good, even though the system sold like butt cheeks. You know, but overall, it's just kind of whatever. The Wii had a fantastic attach rate. I think this is important to look at this right here, that the Wii had a much higher attach rate than the Switch. Okay, I think that's kind of important to note, because one, it just means more people were buying more games for the Wii, but it also means that they were actually making, in a way, they were making more money on the Wii. That's not necessarily true, because prices can be different. That doesn't take into account like the cost, you know, how expensive were these games. But generally speaking, the general rule of thumb is you make more money off software than hardware. Hardware, you tend to lose money. Nintendo's not losing money on Switch, but like you tend to lose money on the hardware, and you make all the money on the software. So software is where you make all your money. So you want a high attach rate. That's the goal. Is, well, you want both, but like you want a really good attach rate no matter what. And the Wii had an incredible attach rate, 9 games roughly for every like every Wii owner owned at least 9 games, which is kind of incredible to think about. I know I did, but I was also kind of a reviewer at the time, so I was like, it doesn't really count. DS, pretty similar situation, another basically 9 to 1. 9 games for every DS owner. Regular DS, not 3DS. 3DS was actually a little low. So that's like really important to keep in mind. Game Boy Advance, which I think a lot of people don't realize this, but the Game Boy Advance was out so little amount of time. It was like 2001 to like 2005. For 4 years, the Game Boy Advance sold like fucking hotcakes. This is probably one of the fastest selling Nintendo systems they ever had. Was the Game Boy Advance sold buttloads, but the attach rate not great. You know, like maybe 4. You know, here's the really incredible one to me. This blows my mind, but it's there. It's in plain. Is Game Boy. This includes Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which I think is really dumb on Nintendo's part, but whatever. The original Game Boy and Game Boy Color combined had only about a 5-to-1 attach rate. So they basically, on average, every person who owned a Game Boy and Game Boy Color only owned 5 games. I think that's incredibly low. And I'm gonna say the used game market and the trading game market definitely made a big fucking difference on that. Because I can't believe that the original Game Boy has that low of an attach rate compared to like the Wii and the DS, like, or the Wii U for that matter. But yeah, you can kind of like you can kind of like just kind of like go from there on it. You know, like GameCube, really not great. You know, really not great. You know, number. You know, actually these X numbers are pretty good considering how poorly their system sold. And there's an interesting thing here too, is a lot of people don't realize, like, the Famicom, 62 million, you know. Super Famicom, 49, 32. By the way, 25, about 25 million of the 32 was North America alone. NOA carried the N64 super fucking hard. If it wasn't for North America, if it wasn't for Rare and GoldenEye and shit, like, this system would have been a catastrophic failure. And then the GameCube did even fucking worse. People will say, well, the GameCube was a much better system. Yeah, not to a lot of other people. So. Oh, no, this number does include digital sales, because that's Nintendo's own personal numbers. That's not like NPR or Media Crate or anyone else. Skeptical about the Wii number. Does that include Wii Sports? Actually, yes, it does include Wii Sports, because Nintendo, in their infinite wisdom, decides that Wii Sport is part of that attach rate, because the Wii Sports did not come with the system in Japan. It actually was sold separately from the beginning. It is interesting, Patrick, but it also shows you how insignificant Japan is to the overall gaming market. But you're right, KY. I think that kind of like goes back to what I was saying a bit, where I was like, you know, that's not like saying that they made more money or had a better touch. Like they're making more money because the software people are buying for the Switch costs more money, or they're making more better profits because of digital. So yeah, like. The attach rate was good for the Wii U, we can say that, but you can't say it was good for business. Everyone has a GameCube in their top 10. I mean, I think there's a big hole in the GameCube, and I think that big hole is Rare. Losing Rare, I think. It really felt like there was a big hole in the system. I feel like there was GameCube was a little bit of two steps forward, one step back. So, but anyways, all of this leads me back to. Like the original forecast, which I had, where I was like, okay, Nintendo's 5 years into this game. they're not gonna wow anyone anymore, you know, on their hardware or anything. Like, everyone knows what a Switch is, everyone knows what a Switch can do, everyone knows what a Switch is mainly used for. Load all the games this year. Here's what I do. And this comes down to sort of like the nasty, below the surface sort of reality that some people who've worked at Nintendo in the past, like Giles Goddard and others, have sort of said recently, like within the last year in interviews, and that is, and it's something I've kind of been, not like, I'm not doom casting or anything, but like, I've been saying I've been very, very, very concerned with Nintendo's new president because he's a finance guy. And I think that's scary. And a lot of people will say, well, they've been doing just fine so far. And I'm like, Phil Spencer didn't turn around Xbox in a day, a week, a month, or a year, or even 2 years. Phil Spencer's been trying to turn around Xbox for like half a decade. So this shit like doesn't happen immediately. So putting a finance guy into position in Nintendo, and others have been saying like, hey, Forever, here's the turn-based strategy. That's true. So again, like going back to the fact that they don't have a pro model, you know, it's old hardware now, and they gotta, and they definitely they kind of slept through last year. They really did, as far as like releases go. Like they had Dread, and so. Why don't I think Zelda won't be pushed to holiday? But it is. But it is. But anyways, so they're going to look at this year over year, right? They've already kind of had to come out and say, like, we're getting hit by the chip shortage too. We're going to start seeing a dip in console numbers early in 2022, but we think we can bounce back, you know, by next fiscal, like April, May, June. So the point is that when you're run by finance guys now, their whole drive, their whole existence is to make more money than last year. Specifically, beat your year-over-year profits. Beat your forecast, beat your year-over-year. Like, profit forecasts are nasty things because they always overpromise to get people to buy stock, to get more people buying into their company by claiming a number they usually can't hit. But then Nintendo does kind of like the horrible thing where they actually do start hitting them and they do start exceeding them. But then it becomes like this Ouroboros of just a snake eating its tail, where it's just kind of like you have this perpetual cycle of like, I'm gonna give you this. We're gonna make this much money, and it's gonna be crazy high. Oh, we did even better than that. We're gonna do even more. We're gonna do even more. So, so this is where I think it becomes a problem, where they're gonna have to start convincing people to really buy into their system and their ecosystem, and you don't do that by not having some stellar lineup stuff, right? Because here's the thing. Pokemon Company has, I would say, burned the fuck through the Switch. You know, you've got Let's Go Eevee, you've got Sword and Shield, you've got Diamond and Pearl remakes, and now you've got their crazy, you know, new ambitious Legends game, and then you have the new Pokemon Snap on top of it. I'm not saying there won't be more Pokemon games, but I'm like, you know, they've burned through Pokemon a lot on the system. They're done with Smash Brothers. I mean, Mario Kart and Zelda still truck along as like the eternally evergreen titles, and that's great and that's fine. But like, there is a point in which they're going to hit their limit, you know, and it's probably coming soon. Kind of same with Animal Crossing, where I feel like, okay, Animal Crossing is sold amazing and it's still selling well, but like, it's, you know, you can't rely on that for the rest of your year, kind of thing, right? So they're gonna have to start convincing people to keep buying into the Switch ecosystem. So, you know, they've gone through it. So now it's time to start hitting those sequels to the big money makers, which is why you have Splatoon 3 and a Zelda 2, like actual known quantifiable sequels to their big games. And according to Nintendo, as of right now, Splatoon 3 and Zelda 2 are absolutely planned for 2022. So that's why I think this year's actually going to be a sort of quasi-repeat of 2017, because it's been that much time has passed since, you know, the original, you know, launch year of the system. And I think most of the big developers, like the developers who put out the big titles, have had time to sort of refresh and have time to, okay, it's time to like put out the next games. You know, and some of them are even interesting because like HAL Laboratories wasn't there for the launch year of the system, but they're ready to go with their next game. Granted, you know, Star Allies is not a really crazy heavy development game. And I think Bayonetta 3 is kind of replacing Tokyo, you know, Nintendo Tokyo, because there's no, as far as we know right now, there's no Nintendo Tokyo title coming for 2022. They did launch Bowser's Fury last year, but I can't imagine that Bowser's Fury really took up that much time or resources from Nintendo Tokyo. I kind of refuse to believe that. So I'm going to say that they're going to have a Nintendo Tokyo. A lot of people think, hey, they're going to have a Mario game to tie in with the movie. Nintendo doesn't care. They don't really think like that. They're not that much of a Kellogg's brand company where like they have to like synergize, you know, around like all this merchandise and other like tie-in product to this other big movie product. It's really not how Nintendo operates. Yeah, and then there's the other thing is that in February last year, Nintendo announced a Direct, and it had a shit ton of unannounced games. A shit ton, right? And then in June, they had their would-be E3 Direct, and the entire back half of the year was unknown to us at the time. You know, they announced Dread and Mario Party and Game & Watch Zelda and Advance Wars, all and WarioWare in June, and they were all coming out within, you know, 3 to 6 months, except for Advance Wars. My birthday. So yeah, Kirby's now in March. And now I didn't shift around anything else because one, we found out like 2 days ago, Advance Wars actually has a release date of April 8th, which is awesome. And that kind of leaves May open. I think May, June, and July is a big toss-up right now. I think that's the hardest one to figure out. I think it very easily could be Splatoon 3 comes out in May. I think that could easily happen. I think, you know, a Fire Emblem or even a Monster Hunter could come out in June. That could easily happen. Even Bayonetta 3, I think, could shift around, you know, between August, July, even. Mario Rabbids, same boat. Like this middle row is a big possibility. Big row possibility. So, I mean, really, any of them could come out. I don't think Sunbreak's coming out in May because Capcom said it would be summer, which usually means like August or September. Usually, when a company doesn't give you a month, they give you a season. You look at a calendar and you think, okay, what is this season of summer? That is like June 22nd to September 21st. So when they say summer, they usually mean September. Like early mid-September, maybe late August. They always... Well, summer, because in your head you think June, July, August. So you think, oh, it could come out as soon as June. But summer doesn't technically start till the end of June. And summer doesn't technically end till the end of September. So when they release it in September, they didn't lie. I didn't lie. I told you it was going to be summer. It was. Check your calendar. So yeah, like if you don't, when you get a release year and no, like it doesn't say like spring or early, if a game doesn't say early or spring for the year, release year, that means it's second half of the year, usually. If a game gives you a season, it's the end of that season. And end of the calendar season, not kind of what you associate month-wise with it. And when they usually say, if they say you a month without giving you an exact date, it usually is near the end of the month. Tekken was on the fudge cake list? I don't know what that even means. Yeah, a year release is usually like a maybe sign. So, yeah, the real kind of... I'd say the most interesting thing about Kirby's release date is that it's in Fiscal for this year, because remember, fiscal years for businesses are not January 1st to December 31st. It is April 1st to March 31st. So the fiscal year for Nintendo ends on March 31st, 2022. That is when their fiscal 21 ends. So, Kirby is March 25th, which means they're basically squeaking it out at the very ass crack end of 2020, of this current fiscal year. You know, they're giving it a week, which is interesting. Yeah, maybe it's something Hal really needed, which is a good point and one I'll get to. I also think it's kind of like it's going to bleed into both, where like, okay, we're definitely going to get a lot of first week sales here, and then it'll sort of start bleeding into the next fiscal year. It's the last dingleberry for the year, yeah. So yeah, it might have something to do with HAL, because HAL is not, to my knowledge, HAL is not a 100% owned by Nintendo company. Like, they technically don't have to do whatever Nintendo tells them to do. I'm not really sure. I'm going to guess it probably has to do with taxes, yes. But that's true of, like, almost every company. The other weird one is some companies' fiscal year starts on July 1st. It does for school districts. I can tell you that, which was weird. So, yeah, Kirby is within fiscal, which also means that you look at this bottom row, and they may not make it to 2022, but if they make it within January, February, or March of 2023, that means any of these titles in the bottom row could still technically be within Nintendo's upcoming fiscal year, which is interesting. Yeah, I looked that up. Like, HAL is in the same building as Nintendo Tokyo and a bunch of other like stuff like Game Freak and whatever. Does Nintendo own intelligent systems? Not actually, no. We don't actually technically own them. Hal works after Sakurai made Sora. Well, Sakurai just doesn't work for Hal. Yeah, like, they're basically, you could look at it as a second party. They also don't own Camelot. No, they don't. Here's a crazy thing. HAL apparently is only like 145 or 165 employees. That's the amount of people that work at HAL, which is significant, which is like significantly less than even Monolith Soft. Well, that's not true, Nick, because Sony owns Insomniac and Naughty Dog. And I think they own Sucker Punch. Like, straight up own them. Like, at the end of PS1 era, Sony bought Naughty Dog wholesale. And then, like, a year ago, Sony bought Insomniac wholesale. Yeah, that is a lot less. That is a lot less. It's weird to think that Monolith Soft might be one of the largest employee count companies Nintendo owns. Yeah, Sony bought Naughty Dog at the start of the PS2 era because they were upset when, you know, basically they had Crash Bandicoot, but they didn't own it. You know? And it's like they had this company that does games exclusively for them, but they don't own their products. They get released through Vivendi. So Sony was like, no, we're buying them. Yes, HAL did make that Ghostbusters 2 game in Japan. So, yeah, well, here's the other thing, too. I'm not gonna, and you don't, again, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to take anything for it. It's really not even that shocking, but there is a number of games. I'm not even going to say the amount, but there is a set number of games Nintendo has in development, pretty far along, probably. I'd probably argue. What's up, Misheri? That haven't been announced. I would argue there are probably games that Nintendo hasn't announced that are coming this year. So, I think May, someone makes a really good point, too, where, like, May tends to be, like, I mean, Xenoblade Definitive came out in May, but, like, you know, you look at something like Famicom Detective Club or Labo, you know, so you could put some, like, I wouldn't say Big Brain Academy, because they just had a Big Brain Academy come out, but, like, you could put some casual Miitopia bullshit in May. May could easily end up being like, hey, here's this super casual, here's a game about, packing boxes. It's gonna be super cute and fun. When it comes out in May. Please be excited. Melee Remaster's not happening. It's never happening. You need I don't know what hopium you need to get off of on that, but all right, okay. Anyways, I think the one last thing I'll say about this list here is, I'm big brain. So big brain emotes. I have a big brain emote on my channel, but big brain. My big brain is that Zelda comes out in October, not November. And the reason I say that is because ever since Odyssey to Metroid Dread, Nintendo's been strangely releasing their biggest holiday games in October, maybe even September. Mario Odyssey, October. What was 2018? 2018, well, Smash didn't come out till December. Smash was like, oh fuck, we're late on this. Mario 3D All-Stars came out in September. Metroid Dread came out in October. Mario Kart Tour, that remote control car one, October. Mario Party Superstars, October. So I think they've been interestingly, I think they've been pushing their biggest games sort of up a little earlier to October. And I think they've been doing that on purpose because you get those diehards, they get it day one. And they drain the stock. And then they've all got it. So by the time Black Friday rolls around, you got way more, you can replenish stock for all the Christmas buyers.